If you think you've been ripped off, then the small claims court is often the place to go to try and get your money back. But you'll now have to dig a little bit deeper. Earlier this week, court fees increased, with some almost doubled.
The Ministry of Justice says the new pricing structure for England and Wales is crucial to cover the cost of cases. But Helen, a consumer campaigner, says the rise will put people off.
It is, at the end of the day, only a few £1,000s, but only a few £1,000s for a lot of people is a lot of money. You know, if they want to go and get the refund on their car or their kitchen, it's a major expense for them, and they would have taken the risk for, you know, £50 or 75. But now, you know, it's going to be a lot more. It's more risky for somebody to take that.
With us now is Paul Lewis, who's been looking into these increases. Morning to you.
Hello.
So what's happening, Paul, first of all?
Well, the fees are going up quite substantially for bigger claims in England and Wales, as you said, I should stress. Now, the cost of claiming between £3,000 and £5,000, so perhaps a dispute with a builder or something like that, that's risen by £85 from 120 to £205. And a small claim between £5,000 and £10,000 now costs between £210 more. That's up from 245 to 455. And the only good news is that people chasing smaller amounts of money, fees for claims up to £1,500, they remain frozen. They're between £35 and £80. And you can pay a bit less than that if you do the whole thing online, which I must say I would recommend. Those are for paper-based claims that you send to the court. So it's quite a lot. And if you're already owed, you know, a couple of £1,000s by someone, you've got to fork out this money. There's no guarantee you'll get it back. If you win, you should get it back. But of course, if you lose, you don't get it back. So it's a lot of money for people to fork out, and you've got to pay it right at the start with your debit or credit card.
So how are they justifying the price increase?
Well, what the Ministry of Justice says is that the whole principle of the court system is it should pay its own way. So the people who use it should pay the costs of the court. It claims that in the last year, the courts cost about £100 million more than the fees brought in. So they're putting up the fees, but they stress that by keeping them the same for the lower levels, they're making sure there is what they call access to justice for people at that level.
Presumably there is a worry that if the prices go up, then less people take that opportunity in what was previously a relatively cheap alternative.
Yes, I think that's right, and certainly the figures show that the number of people going through the small claims track, as they call it now, has halved over the last few years in England and Wales. So, but it's still a good thing to do, you know, because if the person you're owed money by believes you'll go to court and they know they haven't really got much of a case, they'll probably settle right at the start.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? So the threat might be just enough.
Yes, I think you should always say, you know, this is what I want, and if you don't do this, I'll go to court. But to go to court, you've got to be clear, you've got to have the documents, you've got to be prepared to wait. I mean, I've had tweets from people saying it's taken them 6 months, 12 months in one case to get there. But, you know, Helen, who we saw earlier, she's taken 3 claims and won every one. So she's quite a seasoned campaigner. So it is worth doing, but it's a last resort. Put in a claim, put in a complaint, go to an ombudsman service if there is one, go to a conciliation service if there is. It's a last resort, but a very useful one for people that they can pursue themselves without much risk.
Well, they didn't use a lot of me there on the BBC, so I just thought I'd spend a little time just giving a few minutes of what they had to cut out. As Paul said, I have been to court 3 times and won every time. It's not a difficult process. It takes a lot of time because it can take around 6 months, as it did for me, but that's from entering all your details online to the actual hearing, because there's lots of stages, and I would thoroughly recommend doing it online because it is cheaper. So what do you do to try and keep things out of court? Well, you complain effectively, and there's information out there on how to do that, including on my blog, of course. But what happens when you finish complaining effectively and they still won't pay up? Your kitchen's not being done, you've got a faulty item, and you're still not getting that refund. Well, you write a final letter or email, but you always complain in writing, always, 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 so you've got the record. And you say that you will be taking them to court, the Small Claims Court, and you name the law. So if that's the Supply of Goods and Services Act for services of poor quality, or they've not dealt with it in a reasonable time, or you've got a faulty item, it's the Sale of Goods Act for not providing an item of satisfactory quality. you need to make sure that you are stating which law to show that you do mean business and that you do know your stuff. It's no good just saying, I'm going to take you to court, which a lot of people do, and it's not taken seriously because it doesn't mean anything and it shows that you don't really know what you're talking about. So you need to name the law. And then often that is enough to make a company or an individual pay up because they realise you mean business. Particularly if you say, this is what I'm going to claim in court from you, this and this, and my expenses for travelling to court, my out-of-pocket expenses and the court fees. And that, as I say, is usually enough to get people to pay up. But what if it isn't? Well, you still have some options in some circumstances. For example, if it's a bank you're complaining about, you can go to the Financial Ombudsman. I've used that a couple of times, and it's been fine. One, obviously, and it is a very simple and easy process. And if you think you're right, you probably will win. There's CSAS, the Ombudsman for phone companies, broadband companies. I've used them a couple of times for the same company, in fact. And I have to say, recently I've just used them, and their administration processes were absolutely dire. They were appalling, really bad. I just hope that's a one-off though, and that normally they're okay. They certainly were a couple of years ago when I used them before. But there are also other ombudsmen that you can use. There's the energy, there's parliamentary. Just check to see if there is an ombudsman for your area, because that's for your area of complaint, because that of course is free, legally binding. I certainly believe that people will be put off going to court even more now with these fee rises. The figures have been going down sort of 50% since 2007, and the powers that be, in their infinite wisdom, in their usual way, have thought, oh, we've got to raise the fees to bring in the money. Whereas, of course, if they'd been looking at why people aren't using the courts and supporting it more, more people would be using it and there would not be a need to raise the fees. My concern is that less people will use it. The trading standards are having cuts in their funding, so Citizens Advice Bureaus, so there's less help out there, there's less organisations investigating companies, so there's probably even more of a need now to go to court, and yet it will be more difficult. I think less people will use them, and then the powers that be will say, instead of looking at why, they will just cut, and the small claims court part will be cut, jobs will be lost, and it will be that some people don't even have a local court, and it will be even more difficult to go to court. So there's a concern. That is not good news for the consumer. There's still websites, there's still people out there campaigning for the consumer, so do use us. So when you're at the point of thinking, I am going to go to court, here are some things to consider. The fees. How likely you think you're going to win. And then if you think you're pretty sure you are going to win, how likely is it that you're going to get paid? Because if the judgment is found in your favour and you were expecting payment and within the set period it doesn't materialise, you can send out enforcement, but that is more cost and not a guarantee. I've done it. They had 28 days to pay, and on the 29th day, 9 o'clock, bang, bailiffs were in, and I got paid up. But that was a company that I was pretty safe. I knew that I was going to get paid up because they could have taken goods from their business. You have to weigh up whether it's if it's worth it, if you're likely to get paid up, and also because it takes 6 months. If your serviceman that you've used or workman, whatever, could go bankrupt in those 6 months, that's also something you need to consider. It's all very well winning in court, is another getting the payment. Make sure that all your paperwork is absolutely correct and in nice, simple order, in appendices, ready for the judge to see very easily. He's not going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. You need to make it as easy and as clear as possible. So in your blurb you will put, this happened, see appendix 1, this happened, see appendix 2, so it is all very clear and structured. And of course, good luck if you do go to court, and if you do let me know about it.